was, so we just done the Newport to Bermuda race in record time, and that really, really excited Jim and Christy about, you know, records again. So the whole design of this boat was to be able to break transatlantic records and any yacht racing records out there. And that was something during the brief, that we needed to have a boat that was capable of being manually powered to do that and get the real manual records. So that's why you see the boat with a bunch of grinding pedestals, and it's not just a big push button engine running machine. And so, you know, it's a very hard boat to sail in that fashion. Now the weather window that we decided upon was about the 5th attempt that we had. All 4 before that, we were all the way into the yellow, which yellow means we're on standby, weather looks good, it may happen. We start going crazy here in town because we're not ready, and we've got to get the boat ready, and we're freaking out because we've got 1 day to get the boat ready, get the boat to New York, we've got 1 day in New York, and then we're going to go.
Okay, so let me ask you about that. There's a crew that's basically on standby all the time, ready to go. And what kind of advance notice do you hope for, and to sort of get the word around that, hey guys, we're going to try to make a go at this?
The biggest advance notice we liked was knowing when we weren't going to go. As in, you've got 6 days of nothing going to happen. So it's like, okay, we can start a project that may take some time and get the boat super ready. So then from Stan, he would give us yellow, so that would be red, we're not going in 6 days. Yellow comes along, and that gives us basically 2 days notice. So we'll be leaving the next evening to get the boat to New York, and then we'll be leaving New York that next day sometime. So a day and a half, 2 days notice to be ready. We had everything after Bermuda. The big focus was just on getting the boat into a manual configuration, and then also food, sleeping, crew gear, everything ready to go, sails, all those choices made, have everything on the boat. Like the boat from here to New York was as full as we've ever seen it. It was not very cozy. Well, it was very cozy on board. And then we get to New York and just take everything off of it, and we start going through the weather, looking at what the angles are going to be, what sails we're going to take, and it's you know, boots or shoes. And a lot of guys actually just wore shoes the whole way across the Atlantic Ocean. Didn't even need boots.
So this crew, is it a full-time crew? Is there a relief? How do you assemble the troops, and did a good portion of the crew meet in New York? And then also, in addition to that, and maybe Tim, you can help us out with this, you know, a little bit of the provisioning and the logistics. And for example, you leave here to go to New York. Obviously, dockage was prearranged in New York. Where do you go? And you do some provisioning there as well, I assume?
Yeah, so well, the first thing with the crew, we wanted to do it a little differently than what's been done in the past, with having a crew, you know, fly in and then possibly sit around for weeks at a time waiting for a weather window. Just trying to keep down on the costs. So we had a larger pool of sailors, some who hadn't actually sailed on the boat before, and you know, everyone had just filled out their availability, and from that list, you know, every day we knew who was available for the next 5 or 6 days to do the trip. And then yeah, so when the weather window went green, went yellow, we would look at the crew, available crew, call them up, make sure they're ready to go, bags packed, book tickets, and then finally when we decide to go green, when we're leaving to go down to New York, we've got guys coming from New Zealand, they're getting on the aeroplane to meet us in New York. One of the biggest things with these is trying to get the crew in as early as you can to get, you know, a good night's rest before they're heading off for 5 or 6 days of hard sailing. You know, preceding all the boat leaving, you know, Casey and I had gone down to New York and been to a bunch of different marinas trying to figure out the best place to moor the boat. Comanche draws 22.5 feet, so it's everywhere we go is pretty tricky on finding somewhere we can get into, and also has the availability. So we had a couple of different options, from the cruise ship terminal to a new marina that was opening up in Brooklyn, and then also we ended up with a place in Staten Island. So commercial was a commercial wharf. And we've found in the past, you know, that's sometimes the places we end up is commercial spaces just because of the drive. We knew by the time when we were leaving, we knew we weren't, at the time we were leaving, we decided that we'd do the race, we'd do the trip to the UK, and we would sail the boat back. So we only sent a small portion of sales for the delivery back, and you know, purchased freeze-dried and provisions for the trip back over in the UK. So we didn't send any containers or the cradle from the US. So that made it a little bit easier in preparing for the trip, because basically we packed everything up here, the boat left, and we went and met it on the other side. Although the plan had some possible changes along the way, but we ended up coming back to the States, which made it pretty easy. But the boat left here, Newport, provisioned. As Casey said, everything on board, ready to go.
And then how does it work? You know, it's game day, and you're going to go. Who are you checking in with? Who's going to certify this, if you will, as a record? You obviously notify them, I guess, on or about the start. I watched the video earlier in the week, and there was a countdown to go. Is that right?
Yeah. So preceding the trip, we let the USSRC know that we're thinking about doing the transit. They send us a little black box recording with GPS, which only takes a power input and you can't flash the data at all. So, you know, pay a fee and basically let them know that we're going to go on standby, just keeping them updated, and then meet with one of their members down in New York, Jane Hellman. She comes on board, checks the boat, making sure we're comply by the manual rule for the WSSRC, and then stand coordinating with the New York pilots, the Sandy Hook pilots, for the countdown for the start, to give the official time for the start. And then myself and the members of the WSSRC in the UK for the finish line. Again, a member from them came down to the Lizard. You need to finish within sight of land, or within a couple of miles of land. I think at the time it actually was pretty low cloud and limited visibility, but yeah, so it's at each end you've got someone outside of us saying when you start and when you finish.
Nick, maybe you can walk us through a little bit about the trip itself and leaving, and you know, anything unforeseen or exciting moments, and tell us a little bit about, you know, you planned for what, 4 or 5 days, so life on board and rotations and how many crew, and take us through that if you would.
So leaving, obviously we want to be as cut down on weight as possible, so we end up stripping the boat of anything and everything that would be superfluous to what we're trying to do in that 6-day period, or sub the record. And so the bailouts or a longer trip or something like that, there isn't really that many options. There's something bad happens in the beginning, you turn around and you go home. You don't try and keep pushing. It's very, very A to B mentality, and if that's not happening, then start again. The trip itself was, we keep saying it to everybody, it was a dream trip. It was very smooth. We had some thunderstorms that made it a bit further offshore than we thought. We made it about 250 miles offshore, which created some light air that we had to jive away from, and brought a little question into the whole process. Provisioning and crew-wise, it was a group it was a group that we hadn't actually all sailed together in any event. I mean, a lot of us had all sailed in different events together, and we all knew each other. It's a big Volvo ocean race group, essentially, and everybody knew exactly what to do. Everybody meshed very well. We did 4 hours on, 4 hours off. Food-wise, it's all quite simple. It's, you know, two hot meals a day, and then we would do a cold, like, cereal, or sometimes a third hot meal if it was cold enough. Basically, how we looked at it as crew on board was just keep it sailing, keep it going as fast as possible. Stan is really driving the show here, and we listened to Stan to know exactly our polar performance based on what the boat should be doing. And so for us, it's very much a process of you're on for 4 hours, and you make sure the boat goes as fast as it possibly can. We don't have a lot of input as to the direction. Stan tells us where to go, we make sure it goes as fast as possible. So that's kind of the hierarchy on board, and obviously Casey being the boat captain, he's looking after all the systems, making sure that everything's going, and we're kind of there to assist. So there's a very clear hierarchy amongst us in terms of how the boat is running, and when it's all being done right, it's a very well-oiled machine.
When did you know you thought you had it, and at that point, do you begin to back down a little bit for the fear of breaking something and maybe not pushing the boat to its limit?
To be honest, you really don't know until you've got there. You could hit a container in the water a mile from the finish. So there's no point in really backing down. The boat, you know, is meant to be pushed like that, and we weren't really in conditions that were calling for the back down in order to break. It was extremely flat seas. July is the month that Stan had been saying for a long time, this is the month we want to do it because the North Atlantic is at its flattest. So we were fortunate that we wouldn't have to see conditions that would really back us down. There was a period about a third of the way through, all the way until about probably half or just over half, that we were worried about ice. We were actually in a known ice zone, and couldn't really do anything about it. You had about 100 feet visibility. It was extremely foggy out there, and we have a radar, but at 20 knots, and you know, the reaction time, you kind of just hope it. So we obviously made it through there, didn't see any ice, and were able to push the entire way across. There is a little bit of fear at the end where the system kind of dissipates, that you would run into light air, and so backing down earlier than that was no option, because you could drift across the finish, and you know, every minute counts.
So at the finish, was there a lot of fanfare, spectator boats? I think there was a helicopter, but beyond that, or was it just, here we are, we've arrived? And
no, it's still sailing. It wasn't a huge amount of people. Actually, probably the most interesting person was the guy who was calling it from land. Stan said he's been doing it for like 30 years. And it's this guy that you gotta send him a text or something, and then he drives 4 hours down to the end of this point, a lizard, and then walks down, and he's supposed to be able to see you, but if it's too foggy you can't see you, and there's really no point to him being there. So that was the extent of our crowd, I think. And then after that, we had a 12-hour, 160 miles to go. So that was a weird one for all of us, because we'd all done a lot of ocean races where you cross the finish line and then you kind of start settling into a different mode of thought, whereas we just went right back into a watch system and had to sail another 160 miles to get to Southampton. and probably had more weather changes than that than we did in the whole trip across, entering the solar and whatnot, and then pulling in there at midnight, and you know, the logistics world starts. So you know, the people who are involved with the boat a little bit more full time have to really kick into gear again, and yeah, so it's quite a process. But the actual, once we started, so the time in which we finished, you know, could be considered probably one of the easier parts of this whole process.
Interesting. So you pull into Southampton, is that right? Boat stays in the water, or did you haul out?
Well, I'll let Tim take this one.
Yeah, you know, again, we were stuck with going to a commercial part of the port because of the draft issue. So it's we've been there. It's up in Southampton. Been there last year. We were there prior to the Fastnet race. So we decided, you know, again, we said we were going to leave all our stuff here and, you know, prepared to do quite a short turnaround and get the boat back here to the US. So left the boat in the water. Sailors all flew out. You know, the guys got to the dock at midnight or 1 o'clock. Some guys left at flights at 6 a.m. that morning. So, you know, frantically getting guys, you know, onto their airplane and out of there. A small group stayed behind for a day just to help move some of the sails around, and there's just a few of us there for a week, just prepping the boat again for the delivery. And then guys who did the trip back flew back in and left the UK back to the US. But you know, the boat, as Nick said, you know, quite easy sailing. There was no major damage, nothing really damaged. We're very fortunate. So it was more about just cleaning the boat up and doing some sail changes and prepping for the trip back, getting a barbecue and a fridge and a few luxuries on board, because the trip back was pretty epic. It was like 15 days, 4,600 miles.
And the boat is at the shipyard now?
Yeah, so the boat got back here after a 15-day trip, and was actually surprisingly clean down below. It was really nice. No crew. So yeah, we've just taken the time to you know, pull the boat apart. Boat's out of the water for the winter, and our plan is just, you know, everything's getting serviced, and we're going to be putting things together in the spring and going over and doing the Transpac from LA to Hawaii next July.
Awesome. Very cool stuff. We've got time. If we've got 1 or 2 questions, we can field those. Any questions from the audience?
How do you think about nutritionally for 5 days when you guys are world-class athletes and you have to measure what you can eat and when you can eat? How do you think about that?
Eat as much as possible, all the time.
No, but I mean, you're burning and you don't know exactly how many calories you're going to be putting out, and I'm sure at the end of it, it could be the most critical time. You know, nutritionally, how do you guys plan for that?
I mean, the freeze-dried food these days gives you all the calorie input of what you're taking, and, you know, they're very high in calories, so just freeze-dried. We try to do as much, you know, nuts and fruit and dried fruit, all that sort of stuff as possible. We have a lot of chocolate fiends on board, so heaps of chocolate. But really, that's not really what's going through your mind. You're trying to get from there to there as fast as possible. And if you don't have good food on board, you're going to try to get there faster.
Deirdre, we'll take one more, and then again, just for time's sake, folks, we'll move on and head to Cuba.
I don't know if I need the mic, but did you guys have a big fanfare when you got back here?
We did actually. We had a bigger fanfare back here on the dock than we did over in England. So that was cool. When we got to England, we weren't even allowed off the boat because we got there finally to the dock about midnight, 2 in the morning, and anyone with a European passport could get off the boat, and all of us Americans had to sit on the boat until we were allowed off. So that was really a highlight.
Well, I want to thank these guys, Nick, Tim, and Casey. We appreciate you sort of talking us and walking us through that. Congratulations, what an awesome feat, and glad it, so much of that is Newport centric, and Maine as well, and Hodgson. Congratulations to you guys. By the way, we've got a model of Comanche here, and the boat is at the yard on the Hard, and so if you make it over to the brokerage portion of the show this week, please go check it out. Guys, thanks. Let's give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go to Cuba, and this is Cuba 3.0 now, or 4.0? Okay, Cuba is obviously a hot topic these days, and I think it was 2 years ago at the U.S. Superyacht Association's annual Superyacht Summit, which takes place just a few days in advance of the Palm Beach Boat Show. We started talking about Cuba because it was obvious that Cuba was going to open up. It was going to be a very sought-after destination for the boats, but there were some hurdles, some major hurdles to going there. Talking to us today, we've got Laura Sharon from Fave Yacht Insurance. She's been in the marine insurance business for about 30 years, a native of Miami, and has helped guide owners and charters through this process. And along with her, we've got Paul Madden from Paul Madden Associates and Cuba Yacht, who is probably the best qualified to talk us through Cuba. How many trips have you done now, Paul?
I've personally done about 9 on boats and many others here.
Okay, 9 on boats and several on planes. So let me start with you, Laura. Talk us through, let's back up a couple of years. We knew this was coming, but we knew there were going to be hurdles to clear, especially as it relates to insurance. Can you talk us through sort of what it looked like then and where we are now?
Okay, what I was going to say to start this off is, Cuba used to be a problem to buy insurance, and it's not anymore. Thank you. No, but what happened is a lot of things have changed with Cuba, and obviously a lot of things have changed politically. So where we started 2 years ago was, I don't know, insurance companies don't like to make mistakes, and having a sanction brought against you because you've done something that you weren't supposed to do made them nervous. And so they've been doing it for international flag vessels and international insurers for a long time, but the whole U.S. aspect of the Helms-Burton Act really freaked them out, to be honest. And so a lot of companies have figured it out. It's really not an issue any longer because the U.S. government has made it not an issue. Having said that, you do have to be very, very careful as far as following the rules. You have to work with a company that knows what they're doing as far as getting the boat in there. Make sure that you're following the documentation process correctly, or else you could end up with a fine that is uninsurable. So basically, it's really that simple. There are carriers that are happy to do it. There are going to be limitations as far as deductibles are going to be increased. They're not going to cover you if you have a fine or penalty brought against you. And confiscation. If the Cuban government, you may have an issue with confiscation if the Cuban government decides to confiscate your vessel. So with that, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. I concur with all of your comments. I mean, a lot of what we do with owners that want to take their vessels down there and the charters is try to get people from stepping out of bounds. And the whole problem with Helms-Burton and the embargo is that it's all sort of warm and fuzzy to go to Cuba now. It looks like unless you step out of bounds, if you are not complying with the visa requirements, or if you just thinking from the U.S. point of view, or if you mess up your paperwork with the Coast Guard, there have been fines up to $100,000 per vessel. But most troubling and what keeps me awake at night is that the penalties are criminal. So it's not just a cutting a deal with the SEC or other things that we can do with the IRS. The Treasury enforcement people have badges and guns, and it's criminal action. So there's also a trail. When you decide to go to Cuba, you sign affidavits that attest to what you're going to do on your visa category. And these are, you're committing to do 8 hours a day of one of the 12 categories that you've applied through to go to Cuba. And there's a 5-year audit trail behind you that you agree to, where they can come in within 5 years and audit what you did in Cuba and how you spent your money. And on the yacht, the problem for owners, for charter operators or vessel operators, which is what we do, if one crew member or one guest breaks the visa rules, then the trip could be deemed illegal for the vessel. It opens up the line of exposure. The other thing that the insurance companies have been concerned about is what happens if you have a catastrophic breakdown in Cuba. And so we've been working with the Cuban government on that. We think we have a pretty good towboat system now, where we can get almost any size vessel. In fact, we can get any size vessel because we can tap into the port of Havana towboats and tugboats and get a vessel out into international water where it can be fetched back to Florida. So,
Just to add to it, that was one of the major issues with insurers as well, is because it was illegal to pay a Cuban for anything. So they had to come up with an opportunity to pay a claim in Cuba legally. And so that process has evolved to where they can obtain a unique license to pay in the event of a loss. Well, you can't do it prior to the loss. You have to do it post-loss. So you've got a boat sitting on the rocks in somewhere in Cuba, and it's got environmental issues, and it's got, you know, physical damage issues, and all of a sudden you end up with a total loss on a vessel that should just be a partial loss. So there's a lot of commercial thought process as far as underwriters that had to go through this, which is still evolving day by day. So with the towing aspect you're talking about.
yes, and fortunately, if you have my number, you can call me. We have an OFAC license. We have the same license that Carnival has, and this has mystified many people, including myself. But we got our license last year, the same day Carnival got their license. And I applied for a license against the advice from all the lawyers. They said, don't bother, you will never get a license. And I had nothing else to do, so I applied. But because of that, we're able to actually do business in Cuba under the U.S. laws. We are allowed to send funds in Cuba, and we're allowed to do business with the Cuban government. And recently, 2 months ago, we got a license from the Cuban government allowing us to do business in Cuba. You have to have both because the Cubans will not do business with you unless it's like the Bahamas. Technically, you can't do business in the Bahamas unless you're sanctioned. So we now have our Cuban license and our American license, so we can move funds unless the word Cuba is in the wire transfer, and then the funds get seized automatically by anybody, which is something to keep in mind. But there's there are a number of steps that you have to go through as voters to go to Cuba, and they all hinge on your visa category. So to get that sorted out, then there are now general licenses that get from the Commerce Department for temporarily exporting your vessel to Cuba and bringing it back within a certain number of days. And then the Treasury license is a general license. And then you go to the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard needs 10 working days to issue a permit. And everything has to be absolutely correct or they'll spit it out because they're military. And that's how they do it. So they'll kick it back to you. If you want to change one crew member, they'll kick it back to you. And if you go out with a certain list of manifest of people on board, you have to come back. You can lose crew, but you can't add crew. So those are some rudimentary things. And then on the Cuban side, they're fully unprepared for the onslaught of American yachts. It takes about 2 hours to clear into Veradero and Hemingway, and those are the most efficient ports. And that's just not going to change, we don't think. They're very polite. You will get through. They do certain things with agriculture that you may not have seen other places, but in general, they're very welcoming. We don't know of any boats that have been seized other than ones that have wandered into Cuban waters and been seized. But yachtsmen that go there with the intent of playing by the rules should have no problem. Let's go. Let's see what comes up. Oh, this is what you don't want to do. This is probably the end of the story. This was the Hemingway Billfish tournament. We were at the El Moro Castle having some meetings and looked over and saw this very happy sports fishing boat blasting in the port of Havana. And the tournament, of course, was the Hemingway Marina, which is about 20 miles down the coast. And they had up all the correct flags, and they must have thought that Hemingway Marina had grown. And they were looking around for a spot to tie up and went around the corner. And this you don't want to do because that's the main naval vessel of the Cuban Navy. And they went down and got near that. Were immediately met by all kinds of boats that rushed out and escorted them out of the harbor. But it speaks to how unprepared a lot of people are going down there without charts and without knowing that you don't go in the port of Havana. It's all bound to yachts. That was it. All right. The only other thing I can say is again, as a fellow yachtsman, a lot of people don't realize how big and wonderful Cuba is. It's over 700 miles across. It's got more coastline than Florida. It's got over 1,000 islands. On the south coast, you have 3 or 4 fantastic colonial cities and some of the best diving in the world, unspoiled by pollution and runoff. And while we tend to concentrate on Havana, last year we sent down Whitehawk for 30 days to the south coast, and we've got 155 of the sailboat that's going to do the south coast, which is with yesterday. So there's just a huge amount to explore and learn about, and it's you really have to dig into it to do your research because there aren't any. There's some very good Canadian cruising guides, but those are small boats and they're shallow drafts, so be careful when you read those and where you think you're going to go. And I encourage everybody to cruise down there, but just very careful and very respectfully of the Cubans, because it's their
So let's talk about jumping off. Mike, you and I were talking a little bit last week about Dockwa. Is Key West the place, Paul? Is that where most folks are kind of making a last stop and then going from there, or what's the theme?
I think they are, but if you look at it, if you're headed to Veradero, you might as well go from, just as well going from Miami or Fort Lauderdale, because it's a little bit further east. But yes, Key West is an old jumping off spot. And it's the same Coast Guard District 7, so you're going to get the same procedures in any of those ports.
And then on the provisioning side, you taking everything with you? What's the infrastructure like once you arrive in Cuba? How about cash, banks, etc.?
You take everything with you in terms of provisioning. You can find certain things, but nothing is necessarily reliable. You have to find your way around once you get on shore, and it depends what's available that day in Havana or wherever you are. So that's a challenge. They have decent fuel. Everything is cash. U.S. credit cards do not work. You can show up with a Canadian debit card or European, but then you've got the challenge of finding an ATM machine. Or in a restaurant, they will be able to take a credit card. And generally, they don't. So bring lots of cash.
How about internet and phone?
Verizon think AT&T now works. Big surcharges, so turn the data off. You can get a Cuban cell phone SIM card, and those do work, and they're handy to have. If your boat has satellite, they will ask you not to use it, and you can explain that you need it for insurance and for safety purposes. They won't let any sort of handheld devices off the boat. So certainly a handheld sat phone, they may even hold it while you're there. But they don't want to even see VHF radios, anything that could be used in a sort of conspiratorial fashion. They don't want you to have ribs or other watercraft off the boat at night. They see anything, particularly on the North Coast, anything that floats could end up Key West the next morning. So they're aware of that. They're also very protective of where you're going to ports. You only get cruise permits port of entry to port of entry. And you let them know that you want to stop for the night, or you want to get out of the way of weather. The next night you can get your stop off points. But in general, you don't pull up to a beach and go ashore, or you may be met with armed uniformed people. And it has something to do with the way it takes.
Must-sees while you're there, or cruising grounds. Last time we did this, I think we were talking about Whitehawk, and she was sort of on the southwest coast, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. I think the main hub on the south coast is Cienfuegos for cruising, as far as going in and out. But there are a number of marinas down there, ports of entry, and just endless places to go. You have to go to Havana, so it's the easiest. It's so easy. So you go from Key West down to Marina Hemingway. It's 85 nautical miles, and there's just nothing that compares to Havana. And so that's the experience that most people have to do first.
Thank you. Any questions on Cuba?
Will 1 or 2 years make a difference in how easy the cruising experience is?
No. The Cubans are trying their best, and they like yacht visits. And Fidel does not like cruise ships. And Carnival had to fight very hard to get in there. They will not have the mega cruise ships. They physically can't get over the tunnel under the entrance for Havana. So they're making an effort to encourage more visits by yachts to be yacht friendly, but they simply don't have the infrastructure, and they don't have the capital. And under the embargo, they're technically foreign companies cannot do construction in Cuba under the embargo, so there are sanctions against anyone who tries to do it. Melillo Hotel is doing it. They just built a huge marina in Ferradura, 1,100 slips, state-of-the-art European-style marina. It has no visiting yachts. When I say no visiting, I've been in there. You might have one boat that's visiting, and it's probably crafty Canadian that was there for the cheap cottage.
One more question here from John.
Two questions. Really, is District 7 the best place to jump off? And two, what if you're in transit, like you're heading to Panama or you're heading further east?
You can, the permit technically is entering Cuban territorial seas. It's the permit. You can come in from Jamaica, Cayman, Bahamas, anywhere. And the Coast Guard wants to know when you're going to enter. And that's what the permit says. It's nothing to do with where you leave from. When you come out, you could leave Cuba and you could go through the Panama Canal and enter the United States in San Diego. But they need to know when you're going to enter the U.S. port and who's on board. And that's the nature of the permit.
Okay, let's please join me in thanking Laura and Paul for some insights on Cuba. let's introduce Mike from Dockwa. About 2 years ago, a small world, I got a call from Nick Dane, and he said, Neil, there's these guys that are starting this mobile app dock and mooring reservation company, and they need some help because they don't really know the marine or the marina industry all that well, and they could probably use some insights. And so I started talking to Mike's partner, was quickly introduced to Mike, and I've watched this company go from almost a blank piece of paper startup to being an extremely successful and easy to use mobile application for boaters. I think that the benefit side to the marina and to folks that own and run moorings is huge as well, because I believe, and Mike helped me here, I believe one of the things maybe you guys didn't forecast was how much data you were going to be able to glean about the fleet and the movement of the fleet. And we were talking last week about Cuba, and you said, well, yeah, everybody wants to go to Key West now to jump off, and yet we're finding out that Key West doesn't have a lot of the infrastructure to support that, particularly on the large yacht side. So, but again, let me back up and tell us the Dockwa story. How did this come to be? I don't believe you guys were a bunch of boaters, and you see a lot of these new technologies that that are owned by boaters, for boaters, and that's how this whole thing starts. So, kind of walk us through how this came to be.
Sure. I moved up here 5 years ago, and the company I was with was in a hostile takeover, and the option was move out to San Francisco and take a job at a tech company or try to find something. And I tried to head over to Block Island on a Thursday night and called multiple marinas and didn't hear back till Friday afternoon. And it perplexed me because I'm here trying to give somebody $300-400 worth of cash, and I can't get a response. So that day, I walked down to this marina, and I met that guy right there, who was a dock master. And I said, hey, can I buy you a beer after work? And he was a little freaked out, but I cordially took him up to my roof deck up there. And I asked him why. Why did I not get a response? What was the process like? And, he rolled his eyes and told me that it's always been this way. We use pen and paper. It's very complicated. It's not like the hotel industry. And from there, it started this journey to understand more about the communication process. And to back up, when we started this, I truly didn't understand why we started this. Our company today, I don't know if our photo's up there, our Brady Bunch, it's actually double that size now, but that was the original team that started this. And we believe life is better boating. And the industry has a really big problem of this next generation of boaters coming through. I think everybody recognizes that. Last year, 80 million people got out on the water. We're focused not only on those 80 million people, but there's also 75% of the rest of the country didn't touch the water. And we think we can leverage technology to democratize boating and to allow people to get out more efficiently. I think everybody here had one moment that they could probably recall from their childhood or growing up where they got out on the water and it really sold them on their passion for boating. And previously, whether it was you trying to go over to Edgartown for the night or maybe Block Island, it precluded somebody from experiencing everything that boating brings because of the communication process. So yes, we are an application company. We do build software, and we do believe we do it really well. But more importantly, what we're trying to do is expose boating to everyone. And a good example of that would be Edgartown, a municipality over in Martha's Vineyard who was running on pen and paper last year. They did about 3,000 nights worth of reservations. This year with us, they did about 7,000. And what's important to me about that is that means 4,000 more people spent the night in Edgartown Harbor, and they got to experience what that was like. We believe that technology can be utilized in this industry to help out with a lot of arduous process that existed before. I mean, by show of hands, who here has made a reservation for a hotel or an airline ticket over the phone in the last 12 months? Unless you have to change it and get hit with cancellation fees. We always talk about this. When we entered this market, everyone said this is never going to take shape. Everybody calls, they call, they call. Well, the reason they call is that when I go to your website as a marina, there's no availability. I have no information that you're giving me. When you go to a reservation to make for an airline or for a hotel industry, you guys know immediately what's open. And we think that our technology is shortening the communication. And you made an interesting comment earlier about this journey that we're on, Neil. I'll give 2 examples. The hurricane 2 weeks ago. It was one of the worst moments that I've had, running this. We refunded over $150,000 worth of reservations in 14 hours. And so I'm sitting here watching this run on the banks like it's a wonderful life, and I'm thinking, what the hell are we going to do? And one of the big problems in New England is the season's so short. And so after Labor Day, there's really not much opportunity. You'll get cruisers on the weekend that'll come through. But what was really cool and powerful about our software and what it enabled was people coming from the south canceled on Friday. But on Saturday, it was a beautiful day here. I don't know if everybody remembers. And we were able actually to facilitate and backfill about 40% of that for our marina customers and send boaters out for the night. And so it's a good example of how technology can enable and make things more efficient. And if we can enable 1 or 2 more trips, we think we're doing our job. People look at us, I think, often as a tech company. You said as Silicon Valley, and it's all, we have these fancy couches and a lot of venture capital funding. I'll share a good example with you. I returned from my honeymoon after 3 weeks in Europe, and I get back at 10:30 at night, and you guys have heard the adage that change is hard, right? This is not, the persona that we're targeting is not millennials at this point. They're not the ones that own the boats. We're trying to get them out on the water. So I come back from 3 weeks on my honeymoon, and I'm just trying to find this for you. Is anybody going to be offended by profanity? If you're here at Newport, I think this crowd will be all right. And it's 10:30 at night, and I get a call on my support line. My now wife says, please don't answer that, and I'm glad that she did. And I get this voicemail that you will hear shortly. This is a good example of persona struggles that we face. Here we go. Coming, stay with me. Too much communication here. There we go. Okay. So 10:30 at night, I get this voicemail. So I play this voicemail, and I'm like, good God, welcome back. What did we do now?
So wait, because I didn't hear all that. What's he saying here, Mike?
So he said, oh, I'm glad it's a short clip. Just, we'll play it again. I'm not sure if this is really comes. Here you go.
Oh, it's beautiful. Never mind. You people not this beyond. King Marine is nobody around. I have to get on my iPad, and I can't get there. And nobody's here to help me. Okay. Guess what? Next time I do this, I'm going to tell you guys to go.
Okay.
Got it.
I got the last part.
So I get this, and I think this is a customer who booked last minute, shows up late, nobody's there to tie him up, doesn't know his slip assignment. So next morning I call this customer and I say, my name is Mike Melillo, I'm the CEO of Dockwa. You left a very troubling voicemail last night and I want to know what happened. And he goes, Dockwa? I said, all right, I love you. And I said, oh, do you remember calling us last night? He's like, I didn't call you last night. And I said, no, you did. You called us about 10:30 last night, and you left a voicemail about something at the marina. It's like, oh. It's like, I couldn't get on the Wi-Fi. I thought I was calling Kingman Marine Center because that was the email number that we had. And I said, no, wait, you called us. And I said, well, he said, while we're on the phone, he's like, do you mind helping me book at a couple other locations? And I said, yeah, that's fine. We can look at that. And he goes, and by the way, he goes, I got to tell you, he said, I wasn't going to come over here last night. He said, I did have a couple drinks, so I apologize if I was rude on the voicemail to you. He said, but the staff here is outstanding. It's wonderful. And so subsequently, this guy's become one of our best brand ambassadors. But each day we wake up, I can tell you, I have absolutely no idea what's going to happen, what the support line is going to look like, what problems we run into. Anecdotally, one example. But what we're finding is that the industry as a whole really wants to do well. And they really want to leverage and get more boaters in. And that's really what we're trying to do, is allow customers to find and visit places that they previously didn't think were possible. I mean, you guys cruise here, I'm sure most of you have your favorite places that you visit, right? And you get very fixated on going to one place in Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket or Newport. And part of what we also try to do is that when they're full, we can help navigate you to other locations where you can still get out there and visit these islands. So happy to answer some questions from you about what we do and how we do it, but our big mission here is to get more people out on the water.
Okay, so but it's a two-part system. I, as the vessel owner, go to the app and register my vessel. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And what kind of data are you? Obviously, size, how much I draft. What do you?
Sure. So who here is familiar with OpenTable? It's a good comparison. Right. We're very similar to OpenTable. So instead of you guys filling out forms, calling marinas, you upload your profile, upload your payment information. One of the benefits of what we do is we have PCI compliant systems that handle all of your payments. So you're never giving your credit card data over to a marina. It all gets facilitated through us. Once you upload your profile once, you can see availability based on your vessel size of all the marinas in our platform, and you can book. In addition to that, you can also communicate directly with the marinas. We have chat features. You can share their location. They can send you slip maps upon your arrival. Really, what we're trying to do is make it more efficient. On the other side of that, which is where we think we're going, and what most people don't understand that we do, is 95% of our engineering time is actually on marina management software. And going back to when my initial meeting with Tripp was, the majority of marinas were managing their inventory on notebooks. And it was because it's infinitely flexible in all the different variations that can happen in a typical day. 5 seasonals take off, 3 people cancel, your inventory is very fluid. So our marina management software is really a communication tool for marinas to more efficiently see their availability and confirm and decline reservations after hours. So about 40% of our bookings come, 35% come after hours. Where previously, if you would have made that request like I did on that Thursday at 6 o'clock at night, I'm not getting a response the next day. Dockmaster General Manager can actually get this on any device if whoever's working at home, and with a single click they can confirm, collect payment, notify you that you're confirmed, as well as their staff of your arrival in the upcoming day.
How many marinas on the network today, roughly?
So roughly we have about 400 today, going all the way down to the Virgin Islands, up to Maine, and we just started moving out to the West Coast, as well as in the Great Lakes. So we launched 16 months ago this month.
Awesome. And you guys are based right here, right?
So headquarters, we have 2 offices, one here, actually right in the boat show, and then another up in Cambridge, where the rest of the teams work.
So the benefit on the marina operator side is obviously there's an efficiency model there. What else? I mean, for example, I've got a seasonal slip holder who decides they're going to go cruising for a month. I've got an open slip, and basically I post that slip to the site.
So you don't have to display inventory in real time like that. You're not listing individual slips. Effectively, if you have availability, you can manage based on vessel sizes. So if you want to take only vessels over 50 feet this weekend, you can actually display that in our app. So when someone goes through the process of searching, they now can only see if they're 52 feet, they'll show availability, and we prioritize based on that. So from a marina's perspective, there's several things that happen. One, we do a lot on the customer's experience. We help with pre-arrival emails. We give them information about how to tie up, what communication they should use upon arrival, as well as helping with reputation management. We partnered with Active Captain a couple months ago, and I think everybody here is familiar with Yelp. Very similar of the boating industry, where consumers can come and review verified stays. That's one of the benefits of our system, is we know when you actually stayed. So we're aggregating other customers' information in terms of their experience at each marina that we display in our product. So when you guys are making a decision about where you want to go, you have other people's insights as to what they had when they visited.
Any questions for Mike?
Hey Mike, that sounds like a great service. Are you guys getting comp from the marinas? Is the cost of the consumer just sign up, no cost?
Yeah, there's no cost to the consumer. And on the marina side, because we do not want anyone to feel like they can't join our network and have the availability for a boater to book, all we take is the credit card processing fee out of it. So there is no cost. We have premium versions of subscription software that the marina can buy, which is how we make our money. But somebody can join, a marina can sign up and join and be taking reservations same day with no cost to them other than the transaction cost of the credit card.
Thanks.
Any other questions for Mike?
what was the funding process to get going? Because if you're taking the, credit card processing fee and getting the 400 marinas, you started with nothing. How'd you get funding?
By being really good at selling a story. No, what it was we had a couple really early adopters. I always say there's not many startups that make sense in Newport, Rhode Island, but this is one of them. The reason that we've been able to scale to 400 marinas is because none of the features in the marina software itself are organic. They come from former dockmasters or members of this community who really influenced the product. And so we were able to get some big customers on early and sell them on some premium subscription offerings with what we built. So they saw the opportunity, and I think my example earlier about Edgartown was we've been able to take, by all means, Edgartown was a port that really had no demand problem. We run into that a lot with marinas. They say, we don't need you, we don't have a demand problem. For the longest time, we accepted that. We said, okay, that's fine. But we began to ask the question, well, relative to what? So you have no demand problem, it was based on two things, based on the stress level they felt in July and August, if it felt like they were really busy, and what the P&L looked like the year before. But when we took the math to what they could be earning, they were at really about 45%. So when we were able to take a couple very unique case studies and show an increase in asset utilization with less work, there's obviously a big impact on the ROI for the marina itself, which, again, I know people don't like to talk about it as a business, but if they're not making cash, they're not going to be able to provide you guys with these services that you want. So we some really early case studies that we were able to build up last year that convinced a lot of our investors that they saw the bigger potential.
Okay, any other questions? We said an hour, and we're an hour and 5 minutes, so we did pretty good. Again, I want to thank the U.S. Superyacht Association for putting on this event. Kitty, thank you.
Just going to say, listen, I'm Kitty McGowan with the U.S. Superyacht Association. I'd like to thank Neil Harrell and all of his hard work and his team, Sophia and everybody that have pulled everything together. He's our Northeast Regional Director, so if you're interested in membership or if you're interested in participating more with the U.S. Superyacht Association, either speak to Neil or myself. Thank you so much for coming. We're happy to have you.
I was remiss earlier by not thanking our friends at LaRusso's. If you haven't checked out LaRusso's down at Wellington Square, Will's here. They provided the coffee and the danishes and the treats and the juice, and so thank you to LaRusso's. Let's give them a hand, please. Bridget Murphy behind the scenes, helping us with the logistics and the PowerPoints, and to she and her team at North Sales. Let's please give them a hand as well. Again, Nancy and the Newport Exhibition Group for providing this awesome venue, and of course to our panel. Thank you, folks, for doing that. That was good stuff. We appreciate it. Everybody have a great boat show. We hope it's a successful one for you, and we hope to do this again next year. Thanks a lot.